Duh.
Hello everyone, I'm K Swope, and I am the only YouTuber you know who has more costumes than money in his bank account. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are reviewing Rob Zombie's Halloween. We're kicking off the spooky season a little early this year, which I'm super duper excited for. I'm also doing something really exciting. So in case you didn't know, last Halloween time, I did reviews for the entire most recent Halloween 40 years later timeline. That's Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. Today, I am launching the Rob Zombie timeline, consisting of Rob Zombie's Halloween and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And later in October, I'm actually going to take on the 20 years later timeline as well with Halloween 2, Halloween H2O, and Halloween Resurrections. Make sure you guys are ready for that. Spooky season starts early, and I'm super duper excited for it. But today, of course, we are tackling Rob Zombie's Halloween. Came out in 2007, and there's a lot of controversy around this film because a lot of people hated it. Some people not so much as others. But what did I think about it? Well, we're going to talk about that right here, right now, today. Here's how this review is going to work. I'm going to talk about things about the movie that I liked, the good stuff. Then I'm going to talk about the bad stuff. Got a few notes in there as well we'll discuss afterwards. And then I'm going to give the film a ranking on a scale from 1 to 10. 10 being the Citizen Kane of horror movies. 1 being the stepping on a Lego brick of horror movies. Also want to point out, too, this is well known. There are 2 cuts of this film, okay? There's the theatrical version, and then, of course, Rob Zombie's unrated director's cut. This review is specifically for the director's cut, mainly because it is more accessible than the theatrical cut, which is really, really weird, I know, but I gotta work with what I got, and that's the version that I could rewatch most easily. All of this being said, let's go ahead and dive right in, starting with the good. One of my most controversial takes about this film is that I like the origin story elements of it. Now, a lot of people don't like that. That's very controversial. They think, okay, the shape, is supposed to be like the shark from Jaws, where it's just some mysterious creature who just kind of, comes out, goes stabby, stabby, and then, that's it. But I like that, don't get me wrong, but I think the origin story given to Michael helps a lot. And it helps with the film and the runtime, I think, also, because the first time I watched Halloween, I thought it was kind of slow, not going to lie, the original one. And I've grown to appreciate it and like it for that because it helps with suspense. But the first time I saw Rob Zombie's Halloween, on the other hand, I actually really liked it because a lot of that slowness is sped up because they spend the first about half of the movie telling an origin story for Michael, and then the second half sort of remaking and retelling the story of the first Halloween. And as a result, I think that works really well, and I like the pacing of it, and they also give a very different but familiar ending to the film, and I enjoy that very, very much, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Before I get too far ahead, though, I also got to point out, too, Rob Zombie, okay, he's a musician, okay, that's kind of where his comeuppance came, if you will, and then he started breaking into films. He did, House of a Thousand Corpses and stuff like that, but his needle drops in this film are pretty great. There's a lot of good stuff in there. They got some Nazareth, we got some Kiss, we got some Rush, okay? Is it necessary? No, but do I enjoy it? Yes, and they don't really make a big deal about it, per se, so it doesn't really affect the plot in any ways. It's just they're in there for, like, scene transitions and stuff a lot, and I appreciate it because I enjoy this kind of music. But I also enjoy the cast of this film, okay? Because I think the cast was cast very, very well. Malcolm McDowell as Sam Loomis, I think, is the standout casting pick in my personal opinion. I think McDowell is an icon, and so seeing him in this role, I think, is great. Not to mention, too, it's a really hard role to pick up after Donald Pleasance, but I think he does a really, really good job with it. He's a very different Dr. Loomis also. He's very familiar but different. And that's a lot of things in this film, I think. They're familiar, but they're different. Scout Taylor Compton is also a fantastic Laurie Strode, I think. She does a great job there. We get to see Danielle Harris back, okay? She, of course, was Jamie in Halloween's 4 and 5, so that's really, really weird because she's, an adult now and doing some very, let's just say, adult things in this film, if you catch my drift. And so that's kind of crazy. That's kind of cool. We have Brad Dourif, by the way, which blows my mind. He's Sheriff Brackett. He's, known as Chucky, right? And of course, we have Tyler Mane as the shape himself, Michael Myers. And so he does a great job, too. And something about this film I like, too, with Michael Myers specifically, is I really like that Michael is this big, hulking, huge character. And the reason why is because in the other films, he's just this lanky dude, this tall, lanky dude. And that's not very threatening to me. But, if you're being chased by this hulking beast who just has nothing on his mind but going stabby, stabby, then I think that works really, really well. And that makes me more afraid of this character. In fact, there's a scene in the third act of the film where Laurie Strode is in the Myers house that's like decrepit, kind of falling apart and stuff. and she's climbing through like the ceiling. That's like all, drywall or whatever, hollowed out stuff. And Michael's taking this like beam and he's just stabbing it into the ceiling trying to, get her. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm in this situation, I am mortified, okay? Because this is insane. And that's the kind of energy that I really like that Tyler Maine's Michael Myers brings to this, being a more big, hulking character. I greatly appreciate that. Something I also appreciate is, well, let me rephrase that. Something that I don't appreciate, but I appreciate how they handle it in this film, is the sibling twist with Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, okay? I think in Halloween 2, which I'm going to do a review for that later, but spoiler for that review and for that movie, I'm not a fan of that twist. I don't like it. I think if it didn't go past Halloween 2, it would be fine, but the fact that they went on with more films and that was the big twist, really just kind of ruined a lot of the nuance for me. But they still have that in this film. They make it a big part of the origin story for Michael Myers that I mentioned that they have, that they share, that they do, okay? And I really, really like it because instead of waiting for this big reveal at the end of the second film, the reveal happens at the end of this film. And the reveal is given to one character, and of course the audience. The audience, they should probably know that by this point if they've been a fan of the franchise at all. But that's going to set up some interesting conflict for Halloween 2, or Halloween 2, which I will be doing a review for. Should be coming out next week, so keep an eye out for that. Also, like I mentioned before, I think the pacing of this film is also pretty great. And like I said, it takes the first film, does it in about half the time with some changes here and there, and I think that's cool. And the origin story stuff is fascinating because it's something I've not seen before, so that keeps me, very hyper-focused, I guess, if you will, as to what's going on, because they tell the origin story, and then, like I said, just the movie moves faster, at a better pace. Now, I get you lose a lot of that suspense, but these are two very different movies, the original Halloween versus this one. I think for the first Halloween, I've grown to appreciate the longer runtime and how kind of boring it feels for a lot of it, because it's building that suspense till you get to a point where the score plus what's happening, it's like, oh geez, this is, very anxiety inducing just to watch. And so that's really, really great. That's not everyone's cup of tea. That was not my cup of tea watching Halloween for the first time. And so my first instinct when I saw this movie, and I know people are going to hate me for this, but I thought this one, the first time I watched it, was better than the first. Now, I think I'm going to disagree with that now as an adult, okay? Because now that I understand the nuance of the first one after watching it multiple times, I realize how great it truly is. And this one I still like, okay? It's still a guilty pleasure, movie for me. I still enjoy watching it. But I definitely don't think it holds a candle in the same way that the first one does. But, if you're a Halloween fan, I still recommend this one all the way, and it's definitely, spoiler alert, one of my favorites. There are going to be bad things to say, though. Don't worry. There are going to be bad things to say. Before I get to those bad things, though, I also want to say they use the Myers house way better in this film, I think. The Myers house just kind of shows up in the first film, and we see Michael there in, like, the shadow. But in this one, with the whole origin, they kind of set it up where, okay, Michael wants to go home. He goes to Haddonfield. He goes back to his house, okay? He also wants to reunite his family. So he steals his sister's gravestone and brings it into his basement, and then he eventually, instead of chasing Laurie through like the neighbors' houses and stuff and getting shot off the balcony like happens in the first one, he takes Laurie, doesn't kill her, he captures her and brings her to the basement of the Myers house, where he tries to explain non-verbally, like, hey, you're my little sister, and she doesn't get it at all. And so that causes the big ruckus at the end of the film, and it all takes place in the end at the Myers house. And I think that's a lot more fitting, in my opinion, because we kind of see the importance of the house and how Michael views the house in the 40 years later timeline, especially with Halloween Kills, okay? So I really like the use of it there. The house is just kind of there in the original Halloween, and so I think they're using the previously established location better in this film. Now I'm gonna spend a few minutes talking about the third act, because I think the third act is fantastic, okay? So like I said, he takes her to the house, she gets away, she gets outside, Loomis shows up, okay? And in a old like abandoned pool, it's kind of very similar. He brings the gun out, he pops a few in Michael drops down, assumingly, he's dead, but that's not the case, obviously. What happens is really interesting. So we have the same exchange that happens at the end of the first Halloween film, okay? Where Loomis takes Laurie, puts her in his car. She asks the iconic question, was that the boogeyman? He says his line, except then we get an homage, if you will, to that scene from the first Halloween where Michael slams his hand through the glass door of the car, tries to pull the nurse out, except this time it's Laurie he's pulling out. And so he pulls Laurie into his house, where Loomis essentially talks Michael into trying to off him instead to let Laurie go, okay? Now this gets interesting because Loomis then is I originally thought watching this movie that he was, supposed to like end him there, but turns out no, he doesn't. I don't know if this is just the director's cut talking. But might I also add, this is my first time actually watching the director's cut, okay? Because I watched the theatrical cut a few times because I had like an old DVR recording at my parents' house that I would watch that I always really, really liked of the theatrical cut. So this is my first time actually watching the director's cut. So a lot going on there. But Loomis is, let's just say, incapacitated for now. So he's doing that. Laurie's being chased through the house then, very suspenseful. As I mentioned, Michael Myers going boom, boom, boom in the ceiling. She's crawling through. It's really, really good stuff in my personal opinion. Eventually, Laurie gets Loomis's gun and Michael tackles her out the window, okay, of the house. They kind of fall like a whole story down. She falls on Michael. Michael is incapacitated, unconscious. She's trying to take the gun and fire it at him point blank in the face, and it's not working. Keeps clicking. It's a revolver, right? So she's just going. Michael grabs her hands while she's holding the gun, right? And then the last fire just boom, okay? Loud. Laurie screams. The Halloween music picks up. Cut the credits, okay? I love that ending. It's insane. For when Michael dies, he's clearly not coming back after that. And the abrupt ending, I think, just makes it interesting. I mean, I like when movies have abrupt endings where it just kind of leaves you to wonder, okay, what happens to the characters after this? Now, there's a sequel, so we get to know what happens after this. But it's very, very interesting, very, very unique. And I really like that whole third act also. Those are kind of my thoughts. That kind of rounds out the good stuff. So again, I like it. Hopefully, some of you guys like it too, or at least can see what it is about it that I like. Okay, so just bear with me here. I know this is not a very well-liked film, but I enjoy it, okay? And so there's a lot of that. I will say there is a lot of bad stuff in this film also, stuff that I don't like. For one, this is a statement that I make a lot. Nudity is never needed, okay? It never adds anything to the plot. This film's got too much of it, okay? And I don't like that at all. And I have something much more in the similar realm to talk about later on, but just keep that in mind for now. I also want to say, too, the dialogue in this film is pretty bad most of the time. Most of the characters at least, they're very, like, white trashy. And so, I mean, there's a scene at the beginning where Michael's mom and, like, boyfriend, or I don't know if it's, like, husband, stepdad, I don't know who this guy is. They're having this whole shouting match in the kitchen for breakfast, and they're saying all kinds of nasty crap to each other. And I'm like, bro, this is kind of insane. And then the whole film just kind of, people just talking really nasty all the time. And I'm like, guys, I get that some people, cuss and swear a lot, but I don't think most people talk like this. And according to this film and the world that it's in, most people talk like that, and I don't like it. I was gonna say I don't know if it's sound design is the right thing to criticize here, but the sound has some issues. For one, there's a scene where Michael as a kid just leaves the school abruptly to go attack his bully, and he eventually, him. But the Halloween theme just starts playing for no reason. And I'm like, why is this playing? It's not that it's like bad writing or anything. It's just, why is this here? And then they take the original score and they kind of like misuse it, like overuse certain parts, things here and there. So the sound design generally, as far as how they decide to repurpose and recycle some of the iconic score pieces, is not good. And I like scores a lot for films. I like soundtrack and score a whole lot. So for me, that's something that just really caught me off guard, distracted me. I didn't notice it in my first couple of watch throughs because I was not as familiar with the franchise at that point. Now that I'm familiar with the franchise, I'm watching that and I'm like, this sounds pretty lame, to be quite honest. So I gotta call a spade where it is. Also, almost every shot in this film is kind of shaky looking, like shaky cam, and I don't like that. It's annoying and it's distracting. And yeah, it's weird. There's a lot of cuts in this film too. Like there's never a nice long pan, which is ironic given that the first Halloween opens with one of the like most iconic one shots of all time. This film, none of that at all. I feel like it just cuts and pans a whole lot, and it's not edited in the most appealing way possible. I was going to point out too, I'm going to say something else is going to get me in trouble, okay? I have a very dark sense of humor, and so I think a lot of things are hilarious that I shouldn't be laughing at, okay? However, in terms of racism, there's a character being racist in this film at one point, and I'm thinking to myself, it's not even funny. Like, if it was funny, I maybe would, like, laugh, but it's just not funny. The dude's just, a butthole, just being racist. And I'm like, bro, come on. If you're going to be racist, at least be funny about it. That ties into the crappy dialogue. I'll put that there also. Also got to say, Loomis, his morals are very confusing in this film. I really don't know if he's like a good guy or not, because he seems like he genuinely wants to help Michael, but then as soon as he gives up, he immediately goes to cashing in on his experience with Michael by writing a book and stuff. And we see more of that later on in the next Halloween film, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But either way, it's like, I don't know if I should like him or not, and it's really confusing. So I'm not a big fan of that. Not that Malcolm McDowell did anything wrong. It's all the writing, it's all the script. And the biggest thing I have to say about this film that I did not like, okay? And this scene is the biggest single difference, I think, between the director's cut and the theatrical cut. And I'm going to say this right now. I think the theatrical cut for this film is better, if you ask me. Mainly because of this scene, because there is and how to say this in a YouTube-friendly way, there is a grape scene. And it's not in the theatrical cut. With what happens here is so much cooler and so much better and so much more well done. But what happens in the theatrical cut is this. Michael Myers breaks out of Smith's Grove, okay? And what happens is they're going to move him, okay? During them moving him, he breaks out and goes like bananas on the guards, and it's awesome, okay? It's super cool. The director's cut, what happens is one of the new guards coming in to, watch the thing, janitorial guard guy thing, whatever. He calls one of his buddies in, and they decide to take this one this is super duper unfortunate and very, very dark, new patient that I guess they find attractive, and they're going to do things to her that she is not consenting to. We'll put it like that. And for some reason, the one idiot decides, hey, you know what? Let's bust into Michael's cell and do it there. And then they start calling him a certain slur also, which his stepdad, mom's boyfriend dude also called him. So that's interesting. And I guess that kind of triggered something in him maybe. And then he goes bananas, takes them out, and then he escapes. I don't like that at all. Better than the theatrical scene. The theatrical scene, so cool, and it just shows off Michael's raw power, and it's just really fun to watch. This is not fun to watch. This is just like, why would you even make this? Why would you even put this to film? Because you literally showed us in the theatrical cut that you can get the same plot point across without going there. And for some reason, you just decide to go there, Rob Zombie. What is wrong with you? Don't answer that question. There's a lot wrong with Rob Zombie. But either way, so the grape is my biggest gripe with this film, and that is not something that I like. And it really, really pulls away from the director's cut of the film than it does the normal cut of the film. But that's the bad stuff. I also have some notes to mention. For one, Junie Cortez is in this movie, okay? Spy Kids, yeah, him. And he's got quite the mouth on him, which is very, very unfortunate, and now he's married to Meghan Trainor. But in this film, he is the first victim of Michael Myers. But someone who's not a victim of Michael Myers is Jimmy Olsen. That's right. Dude that plays Jimmy Olsen in Superman is in this film as a kid. He plays the young Tommy Doyle, and I think that's really funny because I've seen him. Skylar's his first name. I forget what his last name is. I've seen him in a lot of stuff. He's been in a lot of things, and I vaguely remembered. I didn't think about this when I started the movie, but I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Jimmy Olsen's in this. That's fun. So a lot of fun things there. Those are my notes. Nothing too crazy, just some fun stuff. But overall, Rob Zombie's Halloween, the director's unrated cut, scale from 1 to 10. I can't give this higher than maybe a 6 because it's the director's cut. I need to go back and watch the theatrical cut. Maybe I'll do a new review for that at some point. That I'm probably going to rank a lot higher, but 6 out of 10 is what I give the unrated cut of Rob Zombie's Halloween. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button. But until then, I'm Case Swope, and I will see you next week for Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Oh, and don't forget, Jesus loves you. Bye!